Welcome to the fantastic world of 1950s radioactive science fiction, where everything is bigger, bolder, and occasionally bugging out. Get ready for a wild realm of giant bugs and towering terrors that may make your average summer picnic feel like a bug-eyed nightmare. In this era of cinematic creativity, a splash of radiation could turn an innocent insect into a colossal monster ready to wreak havoc on unsuspecting townsfolk. So, strap on your atomic goggles and grab your bucket of popcorn and prepare for a journey into the glorious world of 1950s science fiction films where radiation is the magical ingredient. Let's get glowing. Greetings everyone, Mike here with Sci-Fi and More, and welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, welcome to our Team Sci-Fi family, where nostalgic positivity reigns supreme. The 1950s and radiation. What a great combination. Now, despite the theme of radiation making everything bigger, it didn't always have that effect. 1957's The Incredible Shrinking Man, as an example, comes top of mind as a radioactive cloud just made him smaller. But before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank our longtime subscriber, friend of the channel, and one of the largest contributors to the channel, at Serpent Knight, for this suggestion of this video. And it is a fantastic suggestion. In the years following the atomic bombings at the end of World War II, filmmakers became increasingly obsessed with radiation due to the social anxiety surrounding nuclear war. This era introduced a unique element to science fiction storytelling as writers began to explore the idea that the atomic test might corrupt the environment, threatening humanity's future. This concept fueled several narratives about the potential consequences of radiation on soil, water, and DNA, reflecting a growing unease about the impact of scientific advancements. Many films of the era portrayed radiation as a central threat, but it was also used creatively to adapt existing stories for the screen. A notable example is the transformation of Ray Bradbury's 1951 short story, The Foghorn, into the 1953 action horror film, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. In the original story, the creature is drawn to a lighthouse foghorn every 2 years, which mimics the creature's wailing. In the film adaptation, however, the creature is awakened from the frozen slate in the Arctic by an atomic bomb test, incorporating the theme of radiation into the narratives. Following 1952, the public became more aware of the devastating effects of atmospheric radiation as the U.S. and the Soviet Union began atmospheric testing of thermonuclear bombs. Notable sites included Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands, where the U.S. conducted extensive nuclear testing between 1946 and 1958, including 24 detonations during events like Operation Crossroads and Operation Castle Bravo. Operation Crossroads in 1946 was a series involving 2 atmospheric detonations, Able and Baker, aimed at assessing the effects of nuclear weapons on a mock naval fleet, while Castle Bravo in 1954 was the largest nuclear test by the U.S. at that time, resulting in a 15-megaton explosion that created a massive crater and caused significant fallout. The nuclear test caused major environmental contamination and health issues for local populations, resulting in displacement and long-term health problems. Research highlighted the dangers of radioactive substances, contributing to public panic over radiation's effects, which in turn inspired various science fiction films featuring themes of mutated insects and resurrected extinct creatures. In the 1954 film Them, directed by Gordon Douglas, giant mutated ants emerged from the desert as a result of atomic testing in New Mexico. The story follows New Mexico State Police Sergeant Ben Peterson and his partner Ed Blackburn, who find a little girl in a catatonic state near an abandoned travel trailer. After summoning an ambulance, they investigate a nearby general store, discovering the store is destroyed and discovering the owner's mutilated body. While waiting for backup, Blackburn hears a strange, pulsating sound outside and goes to investigate and is attacked. After the trailer owner is discovered to be an FBI agent, Agent Robert Graham is called in to assist Sergeant Peterson. He sends a footprint found near the trailer to Washington, D.C., and learns that Dr. Harold and Pat Medford, marmicologists, are being dispatched by the Department of Agriculture. Harold tests the little girl with the scent of formic acid, which triggers her to awaken from her catatonic state, crying out, "Them!" As the investigation unfolds, they realize that giant ants have grown due to radiation from nuclear testing, posing a significant threat as they swarm and exhibit coordinated, aggressive behavior. The film's tension escalates as the characters urgently search for the ant's nest, located in the ruins of an abandoned city, aiming to eliminate the threat before it spreads nationwide. They enlist the help of scientists, including Dr. Harold Medford, who offers critical insights into the situation. The climax features a dramatic battle against the ants, highlighting themes of humanity's conflict with nature exacerbated by human mistakes, particularly regarding atomic experimentation. The film concludes with a character reflecting on the potential unknown horrors unleashed by nuclear testing that we, as of yet, are unaware of. When Them began production in the fall of 1953, it was originally conceived to be in 3D and Warner Color. During pre-production, test shots were made in color and in 3D. A few color tests of the large-scale ant models were made, but when it was time to shoot the 3D test, Warner Brothers' all-media 3D camera rig malfunctioned, and no footage could be filmed. The giant ants themselves were painted a purplish-green color, operated by unseen technicians supervised by Ralph Ayers. During the climactic battle sequence in the Los Angeles storm drains, there is a brief shot of one ant moving in the foreground with its side removed, revealing its mechanical interior, which was later obscured on the DVD and Blu-ray releases for the film. The stridulation sounds of the giant ants in Them were created by mixing recordings of bird-voiced tree frogs with those of wood thrush, hooded warblers, and the red-bellied woodpeckers. The film also features the classic Wilhelm scream, created 3 years earlier, originally for the film Distant Drums, and can be heard during various action sequences, including when a sailor is attacked by a giant ant and when characters are caught or injured in the Los Angeles storm drain scene. Them is recognized for its special effects and as one of the early films to address fears of nuclear fallout and its effect on nature, successfully blending elements of suspense, horror, and adventure, thus becoming a classic in the sci-fi genre. Then, in 1955, Tarantula creeped into the theaters. Produced by William Allen and directed by Jack Arnold, Tarantula tells the story of a scientist who develops a miracle nutrient intended to address rapid human population growth. However, the unrefined nutrient causes a tarantula test subject to grow uncontrollably, leading to deadly consequences when it escapes, because of course. The screenplay was written by Robert M. Fresco and Martin Berkeley and is based on a story by director Jack Arnold, which in turn was inspired by Fresco's teleplay for a 1955 science fiction theater episode titled No Food for Thought. The film is set in a small desert town in Arizona where a series of mysterious deaths occur, prompting Dr. Matt Hastings, played by John Agar, a local doctor from a neighboring town, to get involved into the investigation. The film reveals a giant spider is mutated by experimental injections of an accelerated growth serum designed to boost food production. The serum, however, causes the tarantula to grow to enormous size, posing a deadly threat to the townspeople. As the spider rampages through the town, causing destruction, Dr. Matt Hastings teams up with his colleague, Dr. Leo McDonald, to find a solution to stop it. The film escalates to a tense climax featuring military intervention and aerial attacks aimed at defeating the monstrous arachnid. Tarantula explores themes of scientific experimentation gone wrong and serves as a cautionary tale about humanity's tampering with nature. It features special effects that depicted the oversized tarantula and emphasizes the horror of encountering a creature pushed beyond its natural limits. The film has become a classic example of 1950s B-movie science fiction. The film's special effects were advanced for the mid-1950s. Real animals, including a rabbit and a guinea pig in Professor Deemer's lab, were used to represent their giant on-screen counterparts. A live tarantula was used whenever the giant spider is seen moving. Shooting of miniatures was reserved for close-ups of its face and fangs, and for the final scenes of the giant spider being set ablaze by a jet squadron's missile attack. And can I just say, thank you, Clint Eastwood, for your uncredited appearance and saving the day as the squadron leader.
You think when Clint Eastwood was shooting missiles at the tarantula, he was practicing lines for future movies saying something classic like,
"Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?"
The resulting scenes proved more convincing in some ways than the giant prop ants used in the earlier Warner Brothers film Them. Of this and the entire film, Jack Arnold said about Tarantula, "We decided to do this film because generally people are very afraid of spiders. Like Them, Tarantula effectively utilizes its desert setting to create atmosphere. Unlike many other 1950s big bug films, the mutation in Tarantula is caused by the peaceful research of a well-meaning scientist rather than by a nuclear weapon or a mad genius with a radioactive isotope featured in the plot. Other cinematic mutants of the decade include radiation-swollen grasshoppers that invade Chicago in 1957's Beginning of the End. Directed by Burt I. Gordon, and also starring Peter Graves, Peggy Castle, and Morris Ankrum. The story follows Dr. Ed Wainwright, an agricultural scientist who successfully grows gigantic vegetables using radiation. However, when the locusts consume these vegetables, they too become gigantic and attack Chicago. The film is often criticized for its atrocious special effects, but it is still considered charming by some, as noted by reviewer Bill Warren when he wrote, "There is something almost compellingly watchable about this goofy little movie." The story depicts the chaos caused by the mutant grasshoppers as they ravage the countryside, prompting local government and military responses to the growing threat and resulting in widespread panic. In Beginning of the End, Dr. Wainwright teams up with photojournalist Audrey Ames, played by Peggy Castle, to uncover the truth behind the giant grasshoppers and formulate a strategy to combat them. As the creatures wreak havoc, Wainwright and Ames face increasing challenges in a race against time to find a solution. The film was produced in 1956 following the success of Them and was financed by American Broadcasting Paramount Theaters, a company formed by the merger of the American Broadcasting Company and United Paramount Theaters in February of 1953. The company hired 34-year-old Burt I. Gordon to direct and produce Beginning of the End. Gordon began his career as a supervising producer for commercials and TV shows, later making his feature film debut with Serpent Island in 1954 and directing King Dinosaur in 1955. Reports from Variety indicated that the story was already set, which claims that Gordon had completed the script. However, the final screenplay was credited to Fred Freeberger and Lester Gorn. The story closely resembles H.G. Wells' 1904 novel, The Food of the Gods and How It Came to Earth, which Gordon would adapt twice in later films, once for Embassy Pictures in 1965's Village of the Giants, and again for American International Pictures in 1976's The Food of the Gods. Burt Gordon created the special effects for Beginning of the End from his home garage, as noted by composer Al Glazer, who provided the score for the film. While originally considering animated grasshoppers, Gordon determined that the idea was too expensive and instead utilized techniques such as split screen, static mats, and rear projection effects. To feature grasshoppers in the film, Gordon purchased 200 non-hopping, non-flying live grasshoppers from Texas, which had just experienced a locust outbreak. However, when he attempted to bring them to California for filming, state agricultural officials mandated inspection and cataloging of each insect, as he later described when he was discussing his development efforts for the film. Gordon stored the grasshoppers in a box for a few days, during which they consumed each other, leaving only 12 for filming. He considered creating miniatures for the grasshoppers to climb, but found it too costly to do. Instead, he used still photographs of prominent Chicago landmarks, like the Wrigley Building, and filmed the grasshoppers moving on top of these images. To depict the grasshoppers being wounded or killed, he just tilted the photographs, causing the grasshoppers to slide down. While one film historian notated that the effect looked almost real until one of the grasshoppers stepped off the building into what was supposed to be air. The film established Burt Gordon's reputation for giant monster movies, though it lacked the metaphorical depth of films like Them. But a more recent evaluation suggests that it reflects 1950s American concerns about invasive species and the rising anxiety over pesticides like DDT. Nonetheless, the movie addresses themes of humanity's impact on nature, the risk of scientific experimentations, and the consequences of environmental interference, making it an entertaining watch even today. Now, there is one movie in this group of films that does deal with radiation that creates giant insects, but not nuclear radiation or any human experiments, but rather cosmic radiation in the 1957 film Monster from Green Hell. Monster from Green Hell centers on a series of mysterious attacks on a group of scientists conducting research in the African jungle. The scientists are investigating the effects of a space exploration experiment that inadvertently exposes the region to cosmic rays, leading to the mutation of local wildlife. As the team delves deeper into the jungle, they encounter giant deadly wasps that have been transformed by the cosmic rays, which terrorize both the scientists and the local tribes. In preparation for sending a crewed rocket into space, American scientists Dr. Quint Brady and Dan Morgan oversee a program that tests animal survival rates in space. After the rocket carrying wasps malfunctions and is projected to land off the coast of Africa, Dr. Lawrence and his daughter Lorna conduct an autopsy on a native who died from paralysis caused by venom. They learn from Arobi, their African assistant, that a monster is believed to be terrorizing people and animals in a region called Green Hell. Producer Al Zimbalist and director Kenneth Crane wanted the film to look authentic, so they included jungle locations and wild animal footage and borrowed several scenes from the 1939 film Stanley and Livingston. Additionally, one of the filming locations was Bronson Caves, located in Griffith Park, Hollywood. The film was released in black and white with a special tinted sequence added, with the special effects being done by Jack Rabin, Louise DeWitt, and Irving Block, with stop-motion animation by Gene Warren. And I will say, the full-size mock-ups of the wasps are fairly impressive. And there are only a very few brief stop-motion scenes which I think may be considered poorly done, but the rest looks great. One scene shows a python attacking a giant wasp, and the wasp pulls the snake from around its neck, pins it to the ground, and pumps it full of poison from long spikes on both sides of mandibles, instead of, the stinger from the tail. Never mind the fact that wasps don't have stingers in front. These are mutated wasps, so anything goes. Film historian Bill Warren noted a claim that famed creature creator Paul Blaisdell designed and operated the giant wasp head. But Blaisdell himself stated that he only submitted a few sketches of the giant insects to producer Al Zimbalist during the film's planning phase, hoping for a job. Blaisdell insisted that Zimbalist never responded or returned the sketches, even after attempts to contact Zimbalist, including attempts from his agent Forrest J. Ackerman. Meanwhile, as researchers struggle to survive and combat the wasps, the film explores rising tensions and the repercussions of their scientific pursuits, blending adventure, horror, and science fiction while reflecting 1950s fears about technology and the unknown in their fight against the monstrous creatures created by their experiments. And as long as we are talking about giant bugs, let's talk about one that didn't actually originate from radiation, but rather a natural event: the black scorpion. The Black Scorpion is a 1957 science fiction film about giant scorpions that emerge from a volcano following an eruption. It's a fun, black and white, giant arachnid horror film from Warner Brothers. And, unlike many of the other films at the time, as mentioned, it does not attribute the scorpion's size to radiation. Produced by Jack Dietz and Frank Melford and directed by Edward Ludwig, the film features stop-motion animation effects by legendary stop-motion effects master Willis O'Brien. The plot revolves around prehistoric scorpions released by volcanic activity, wreaking havoc in the countryside and ultimately threatening Mexico City. In The Black Scorpion, giant scorpions are mutated by a volcanic eruption and geothermal activities. Led by Dr. Hank Scott, a group of scientists alongside a local rancher and his daughter investigate the destruction caused by the volcano. They encounter the aggressive scorpions, which terrorize nearby towns and kill residents. As the team works to understand and combat the creatures, the plot unfolds with thrilling encounters and battles. The film highlights the tension between nature and humanity, reflecting classic 1950s science fiction themes and the dangers of environmental disruption. Now, in my opinion, there is both good and bad in this film. One of the bad touches to the film accounts for why the scorpion had to be black. The film ran out of money in production, so no image of the scorpion could be superimposed over the matte silhouette of the scorpion in many of the later scenes. The producers assumed the imagination of the audience would fill in just a very dark scorpion because the eye could not find the details of the scorpion. So that is why in these scenes the monsters are shown in silhouette. Now, for me, and this is a personal opinion, but the plot of the Black Scorpion borrows a lot from them. Two main characters, geologists, played by Richard Denning and Carlos Rivas, are studying a volcano in Mexico when they get involved with a beautiful rancher and then some mysterious disappearances. It seems a number of people, including a police officer, have disappeared. Also, the scientists hear some mysterious sounds that are a lot like the ant calls from them. The locals think that it is caused by a demon bull, and it takes a long time to establish that the real menace is a breed of 20-foot scorpions released by the volcano from being sealed in the rocks. When it came to the creature's movement, Willis O'Brien, known for his stop-motion effects in the original King Kong, served as the special effects supervisor for bringing the giant scorpion to life, though on a much smaller budget. Pete Peterson, who had collaborated with O'Brien on Mighty Joe Young and the Giant Behemoth, handled most of the animation. O'Brien borrowed heavily from his earlier films for the stop-motion effects in this project. The miniatures for the trapdoor spider and the giant tentacled worm are believed to be the same ones from the Lost Spider Pit sequence of the 1933 King Kong. The trapdoor spider model closely resembles the smaller spider seen in the behind-the-scenes images from that film. However, biographers debate whether O'Brien preserved his models. Ray Harryhausen's In Animated Life mentions that many models from King Kong were still at RKO Studios in the 1950s, although many had deteriorated. Additionally, a large-scale scorpion head was used for close-up shots, and the opening sequence features footage from the eruption of the Paracutin volcano, the Mexican volcano active from 1943 to 1952. The film combines elements of horror and adventure, showcasing the terrifying impact of nature twisted by volcanic activity, leading to the creation of these gigantic, deadly creatures. And that's not the end. There were still more giant bugs that came to theaters in the 1950s that fell victim to radiation of some kind, like the deadly mantis in 1957 and the spider in 1958. And let's not forget about the giant nuclear octopus in It Came From Beneath the Sea in 1955. Or, better yet, giant snails affected by radiation that creep into the Los Angeles Naval Station to eat Navy personnel, in The Monster That Challenged the World in 1957? And how about the enormous crabs that absorb the knowledge and voices of the people they attack and eat in Attack of the Crab Monster in 1957? And what about the effects of radiation on humans? Don't worry, the 1950s had you covered, with other metamorphosis films, including Attack of the 50-Foot Woman in 1958 and The Incredible Shrinking Man in 1957. And don't forget The Amazing Colossal Man from 1957. Video on that one is coming up next. And there is no way we can talk about irradiated monsters without mentioning the granddaddy of nuclear monsters, Ishiro Honda's 1954 Godzilla, which was also partially inspired by the giant nuclear dinosaur movie The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Godzilla, however, he's in his own category, though, with 70 years of films to his credit and a Guinness Book of World's Record for the longest-running film franchise. Not a bug, clearly, but when you're talking about creatures affected by radiation in 1950s sci-fi, you have to at least mention the big guy. Now, if someone didn't ask this question, I would be surprised. Mike, why didn't you include 1958's The Fly in this list, since it was a metamorphosis film involving a scientist who becomes half human, half fly, and can't change back to his normal self? Specifically with ads for The Fly at the time claiming the first time atomic mutation of humans has been shown on the screen. Well, the short answer for that one is, while it is definitely worthy of mention here, there is a lot going on with The Fly, and it truly deserves its own video to properly cover it. That one is coming up soon as well. And there you have it, Cosmic Core. We hope you have enjoyed our radioactive creepy crawlers of the 1950s. And if you did, and you enjoy this kind of stuff, be sure to like and share the video. And since you're here, stick around for a while and consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue our sci-fi journey together as a team. It really is one of the best ways to support the channel. And again, a special thank you to longtime subscriber and friend of the channel and frequent contributor at Serpent Knight for this great video suggestions. Guys, thank you so very much for watching the video and your continued support of the channel. You are all the greatest sci-fi team on YouTube. And stay tuned. We have new upcoming subscriber suggested videos like 1957's The Colossal Man, 1958's The Fly, and a suggestion for a 1936 British science fiction film, Things to Come. So, plenty on the way. Have a great galactic day, everyone, and we will see you in the next one.